The prayer that gives you unbreakable faith. The Divine Mercy Chaplet. There are moments when faith feels like a candle in the middle of a storm. The winds of fear, doubt, and pain hit from every direction, and the flame trembles as if it's about to vanish. In those moments, many look up to heaven and whisper the same desperate question: God, where are you? The silence that follows feels unbearable, and the soul begins to believe that it's been abandoned. But what if that silence isn't absence? What if that silence is where faith is born? The Divine Mercy Chaplet was not given for times of comfort or spiritual victory. It was given for nights like these, when the soul shakes, when the heart is exhausted, when prayers seem to dissolve into nothingness. It is a prayer forged in divine compassion, designed not to remove suffering but to transfigure it. Every bead, every word, every repetition is a heartbeat echoing in eternity, a rhythm that unites human weakness with the infinite mercy of Christ. Faith that never trembles has never been tested, and faith that has never been tested cannot grow roots deep enough to withstand the storm. That's why this prayer is not a formula. It's a bridge. It connects the lowest point of human despair to the highest act of divine love. It whispers truth into the chaos, that mercy is stronger than sin, that light is stronger than darkness, and that the hand of God is never too far to lift you again. In this reflection, you will walk through the hidden journey of the soul, from the trembling night of doubt to the radiant dawn of trust. You will see how the Divine Mercy Chaplet is not only a devotion, but a spiritual weapon, one that shapes faith until it can no longer be broken. Because real faith is not proven in miracles, it's proven in endurance, in trust, in the quiet whisper that says, even in the storm, Jesus, I trust in you. The night. When faith trembles, there is a night that comes to every believer, no matter how strong, no matter how devout. It is the night when the light of prayer seems to fade, and every word sent to heaven feels unanswered. You try to pray, but the words fall heavy, lifeless, as if they no longer belong to you. You look for signs, but there is only silence. It is in that night, when faith trembles, that the soul faces its greatest truth, that love for God cannot depend on what is felt, but on what is chosen. Faith, in its purest form, is not born in clarity, but in darkness. It is not built in peace, but in the fire of uncertainty. This night does not come to destroy. It comes to purify. It strips away the illusion that faith is comfort, showing that real trust begins when there is no visible reason to believe. When everything collapses around you, when you no longer understand why God allows pain, that is when He begins to write the deepest chapters of your story. The trembling of faith is not its death. It is its awakening. It is the shaking of the soul before a mystery greater than itself, the moment when human strength finally surrenders and divine mercy takes its place. In the darkness, the enemy whispers that you have been forgotten. He will try to convince you that silence means rejection, that unanswered prayers mean distance. But the truth is the opposite. God hides not to abandon you, but to transform you. In His silence, He is carving the foundations of unbreakable trust. Just as a seed must break in the soil before it becomes life, faith must be broken open before it becomes strong. The pain of not feeling God's presence is not punishment. It is preparation. He is removing the scaffolding of emotion so that your soul can learn to stand on truth alone. In the night when faith trembles, there is a holy invitation. It is the call to remain, to keep praying even when your voice shakes, to keep trusting when your heart is tired. It is the invitation to kneel not because you understand, but because you surrender. And in that surrender, heaven moves, not with noise or lightning, but with quiet power that only those who wait can feel. The trembling becomes transformation. The darkness becomes the sacred place where your soul learns the true sound of mercy, not in words, but in endurance. If you are in that night, do not fear. You are standing where saints once stood, where the strongest faiths were forged. Every trembling prayer, every sigh, every tear has been heard. The chaplet was born for this exact moment, for souls who cling to mercy when everything else is gone. Because faith that survives the night does not merely return to the light, it becomes the light itself, the invisible hand that never let go. There are times when you think you are walking alone. You look back and see no footprints beside yours, no signs that heaven has intervened, no trace of divine presence in your path. Everything feels abandoned, suspended in uncertainty, and the thought arises quietly, almost whispering, "Maybe God let go of me." But that thought, though it feels real, is the most dangerous illusion of all. Because even when your mind cannot sense it, even when your heart feels numb, an invisible hand still holds you, steady, patient, and unwavering. The mercy of God is not always loud or visible. It doesn't always come in the form of miracles or voices from the sky or sudden deliverance from pain. Often it comes disguised as endurance, the quiet strength that allows you to keep going when nothing makes sense. It comes as that unexplainable peace that rises from nowhere in the middle of chaos. That is mercy moving, unseen but unshakable, holding your spirit when you no longer have the strength to hold yourself. The Divine Mercy Chaplet reminds us of this hidden reality. God's hand never withdraws, it only moves deeper, beneath what the eye can see. When Saint Faustina heard the words of Jesus, "Encourage souls to trust in my mercy," it wasn't just for those who were strong, but especially for those who felt abandoned. The invisible hand is not a metaphor. It is a truth woven into the fabric of creation. Every heartbeat you have is proof that His mercy sustains you. Every moment you choose not to give up is His grace at work within you. You breathe because He wills it. You hope because His Spirit whispers it. When you fall and somehow rise again, that is not your strength. That is His hand beneath your soul, lifting you without your awareness. The greatest deception of despair is to make you think that silence means distance. But silence is where God works most intimately. When He seems far, He is closest. When you see no signs, He is already in motion. The hand that once formed you in your mother's womb has never let you go. It guides without forcing, it carries without showing, and it never grows weary. This is the paradox of mercy. It hides itself not to confuse you, but to strengthen your trust. Because if you could always see, you would never learn to believe. The invisible hand of God is not felt in victory, but in survival. It is the force that holds your soul above the waters when everything else tries to pull you under. And when you pray the chaplet, you are not just speaking into the void. You are placing your trembling hands into His, repeating words that bridge time and eternity. Have mercy on us and on the whole world. With each repetition, you surrender the illusion of control and feel, even if faintly, the pulse of that unseen mercy guiding you through the storm. One day, when you look back at the darkest chapters of your life, you will see fingerprints everywhere. Not on the surface, but in the way you were never truly lost, never completely broken, never beyond hope. You will realize that the hand you thought had let go had been carrying you all along. When heaven speaks through a wound, there comes a moment when pain stops being just pain. It becomes a message. At first, you resist it. You fight against the ache, the disappointment, the loss. You beg for it to stop, convinced that healing means the absence of suffering. But there is a deeper truth hidden inside every wound. God does not waste pain. What the world sees as weakness, heaven uses as a doorway. And through that doorway, mercy speaks. Not in thunder, not in visions, but in the quiet endurance of a heart that still chooses to believe. When Christ showed his wounds to the disciples after the resurrection, he was not showing defeat. He was revealing redemption. The marks on his hands and side were not erased by glory. They were glorified by love. Every scar became proof that suffering, when united with mercy, no longer destroys. It transforms. In the same way, the wounds in your life, the ones that feel too deep, too unfair, can become sacred spaces where heaven whispers its greatest truths. If you listen, you'll hear it. The voice of God, not removing your pain, but teaching you how to let it bloom into purpose. Many believe that faith is about avoiding suffering, but the saints learned that faith is forged inside it. Saint Faustina understood this mystery. In her diary, she wrote of feeling abandoned, misunderstood, physically tormented, yet it was precisely there that Jesus revealed the chaplet. The prayer was born not in comfort, but in agony. Because mercy is not born from perfection, it rises from brokenness. Your tears, your doubts, your struggles are not the end of faith. They are the soil where faith grows roots deep enough to reach eternity. There is a sacred alchemy in pain that the world cannot comprehend. When you offer your wounds to God instead of hiding them, they begin to shine. They become testimonies, silent sermons that speak louder than words. Each act of trust in the middle of suffering becomes a declaration that love is stronger than fear, and that mercy has the final word. When you whisper, "Jesus, I trust in you," through your tears, it is not weakness, it is the highest form of worship. It is saying, even here in this pain, you are still good. Every wound is a teacher. It teaches humility, patience, and compassion. It strips away pride and forces the soul to see what truly matters. And when heaven speaks through that wound, something changes forever. You no longer ask only for the pain to end. You ask for it to bear fruit. You no longer see yourself as a victim of life's storms, but as a vessel through which mercy flows to others. The wound that once silenced you becomes the reason others find hope. So when you look at your scars, don't see what was lost. See what was sanctified. The same God who turned the wounds of Christ into doors of salvation can turn your suffering into a passage of grace. Heaven still speaks, not above your pain, but through it. And every time you pray the chaplet, you are not only asking for mercy, you are allowing your wounds to echo the eternal cry that once saved the world. The secret pulse of the chaplet. Every prayer has a rhythm, but few possess the divine heartbeat that flows through the chaplet of divine mercy. It is not merely a sequence of words or repetitions on beads. It is a living current that carries the soul into the very center of Christ's mercy. When you begin to pray it, something subtle happens within. Your breathing slows, your mind quiets, your heart begins to sync with something higher. That rhythm is not random. It is the hidden pulse of heaven echoing through human weakness, the sound of the Creator inviting His creation to beat in harmony with His infinite compassion. Each phrase of the chaplet has weight beyond language. When you say, "Have mercy on us and on the whole world," you are not reciting a request. You are joining an eternal act. You are standing spiritually at the foot of the cross, where time dissolves and only love remains. The repetition, often misunderstood by those who don't feel its depth, is not monotony. It is formation. Every repetition shapes the soul, carving space for grace to enter, washing away the residue of fear, pride, and despair. The more you pray, the more that pulse takes over, drawing your heart into alignment with the very rhythm of divine mercy. In a world addicted to noise, the chaplet becomes a countercurrent. It teaches you to move slower, to dwell in the sacred space between each word, to rediscover that mercy is not a concept, but a presence. That presence begins to live inside you. You feel it when anxiety calms for no reason, when forgiveness comes easier than expected, when peace begins to outlast your problems. That is the secret pulse at work. It doesn't demand attention. It transforms quietly, as blood flows through a heart that never stops beating. Saint Faustina once wrote that praying the chaplet is like soothing the wrath of God, but it also soothes the storm inside the human soul. Every repetition sends ripples through the invisible, touching not only your heart, but hearts you may never meet. It reaches souls across distance and time, offering intercession to the dying, comfort to the suffering, and strength to those who have forgotten how to believe. The chaplet unites you with all who have ever whispered those words, forming a single river of trust that flows into eternity. The beauty of this mystery is that it does not rely on your strength or eloquence. Even when your voice trembles, the pulse continues. Even when your mind wanders, the rhythm does not stop. The Divine Mercy Chaplet is mercy itself praying through you. When you surrender to its rhythm, you stop striving to reach God and realize that He has been reaching for you all along. It is not your prayer that moves His heart. It is His heart that moves yours. And in that realization, the ordinary transforms into the sacred. The beads become veins of light, each one carrying grace to the hidden corners of your soul. The more you pray, the more you sense that heaven breathes through every word. The pulse of mercy beats not above you, but within you, steady, patient, eternal. Where doubt and grace collide, there is a battlefield that cannot be seen, and it lies within the heart of every believer. It is the place where doubt and grace collide. One moment, you are confident that God is with you. The next, you feel completely abandoned. You try to pray, but your words sound hollow. You look for signs, but heaven remains quiet. In that tension between faith and uncertainty, many souls either grow or fall away. But what most don't realize is that this very collision, the clash between belief and confusion, is sacred ground. It is where God molds faith into something indestructible. Doubt does not mean the absence of faith. It often means faith is being purified. When you question, when you wrestle, when you demand to understand why things happen the way they do, God is not offended. He listens. He allows the storm to rage because He knows what it will reveal when the winds settle. Grace does not silence doubt by force. It transforms it from within. It teaches you that faith is not the denial of questions, but the decision to trust even without answers. And when grace meets doubt, something extraordinary happens. The fragile parts of your soul become the foundation for divine strength. In those moments of inner struggle, The chaplet becomes a weapon forged in mercy. When you whisper, "For the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us," you are standing at the center of that battlefield. Each word is like a shield deflecting despair, a light cutting through uncertainty. You may not feel victorious, but heaven sees your perseverance as triumph. Every time you pray through confusion, you affirm that God's truth is greater than your emotions, that His promises outweigh your fears. Grace does not always come as peace. Sometimes it comes as endurance. It holds you steady when everything else shifts. It reminds you that faith without tension would never grow muscle. Just as the body strengthens under resistance, the soul strengthens under spiritual conflict. When doubt presses, grace answers quietly, "Stay." And in staying, you learn the deepest lesson of trust, that belief is not sustained by feelings, but by fidelity. The saints did not become saints because they never doubted. They became saints because they kept praying when they did. This collision between doubt and grace is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to reveal you. It exposes where you have built on sand and invites you to rebuild on rock. It shows you that God does not ask for perfect confidence, only for honest surrender. Even when your mind says, "I don't understand," your soul can still whisper, "But I trust you." And that whisper shakes the darkness more than 1,000 shouted prayers. So when your faith feels fractured, when your questions feel louder than your hope, do not run from that place. Kneel in it. That is where heaven meets humanity. That is where the cross and mercy converge. And every time you choose to pray the chaplet in that collision, you are not failing. You are fighting. You are allowing grace to do what it does best, to turn the chaos of the soul into a sanctuary where trust is born again. The light that descends in the silence. There is a kind of silence that feels unbearable. It isn't just the absence of sound. It is the weight of unanswered prayers, the pause between pleas and replies that never seem to come. You kneel, you speak, you wait, and all you hear is stillness. That silence can feel like distance, like heaven has turned its face away. Yet this is one of the deepest mysteries of faith. God often hides His presence so that your soul can learn to see beyond what can be heard. In that very silence, something invisible begins to descend, not as noise, not as revelation, but as light. The human heart expects God to speak through thunder, through emotion, through visible signs. But He speaks most clearly in the quiet. When the noise fades, the distractions fall, and only stillness remains. His presence becomes sharper, purer, unmistakable. The Divine Mercy Chaplet carries you into that sacred quiet. As you pray, your words become less about asking and more about resting. You begin to feel that silence is not an absence to be feared, but a sanctuary to be entered. Within it, light descends softly, like dawn creeping over the horizon. Silence has its own language. It tells you what words never could. It shows you that faith is not proven by how much you can say, but by how long you can wait. Many people flee from silence because it reveals too much. The noise within them, the wounds they've hidden, the fears they have buried. But when you dare to stay, when you allow the silence to settle instead of running from it, you begin to notice that something luminous is hidden inside it. The same God who spoke worlds into existence with a word now speaks to your heart through quiet mercy. This is where the Divine Mercy Chaplet performs its most mysterious work. Every repetition lowers the volume of the world until only grace remains audible. You stop demanding and start listening. You realize that heaven's greatest answers often come wrapped in stillness, not because God ignores you, but because He is nearer than your own thoughts. His silence is not rejection. It is revelation waiting to unfold. The light that descends in those moments is not visible to the eyes, but it is felt in the soul as calmness that has no human source, as clarity that arises without logic, as warmth that appears in the middle of cold confusion. When you learn to rest in that kind of silence, you enter the same space that saints and mystics once entered, the sacred interval between earth and eternity. There, prayer stops being a request and becomes communion. The more you trust that silence, the more you realize that you were never alone in it. The stillness you feared becomes proof of His presence. The waiting becomes worship. The quiet becomes light. So when you pray the chaplet and nothing seems to happen, do not force words to fill the air. Let them fade. Let your soul breathe in the silence until you sense what cannot be spoken. That is where God's mercy descends, not as sound or vision, but as light that anchors your faith deeper than any noise ever could. The mercy that bends time. There are prayers that stay within the boundaries of the moment, and there are prayers that break them. The Divine Mercy Chaplet belongs to the latter. It is not confined by the limits of time or space. When you pray it, you are not speaking into the air of this present hour. You are touching eternity. The words, "Have mercy on us and on the whole world," travel beyond the now. They echo into the past, reach into the future, and embrace souls you will never know. This is the mystery of mercy. It moves freely across time, because the one who grants it is not bound by it. When Jesus entrusted the chaplet to Saint Faustina, He revealed that it had the power to reach the dying, to save souls in their final moments, even those far from the heart of faith. Think about that. A prayer uttered in your room can touch someone's final breath across an ocean or in another century. Mercy bends time because love is stronger than its limits. The God who exists outside of history listens to you inside of it, and every word of sincere prayer becomes a bridge connecting the temporal to the eternal. In that way, the chaplet is not just your prayer. It is participation in the eternal act of redemption that began on Calvary and never ceased. When you pray, for the sake of His sorrowful passion, you are standing mystically at the foot of the cross, united with the suffering of Christ as if time itself had folded to let you enter that sacred moment. The same blood that was shed then still flows through every repetition now. Each prayer becomes a drop of mercy that falls into the ocean of divine love, touching souls long gone and yet to come. This truth changes the way you see prayer. It is not a request waiting for approval. It is a movement within God's timeless mercy. You may think you are praying for one person, one need, one moment, but heaven uses your offering to heal far more than you imagine. The soul that intercedes through the chaplet becomes part of a vast network of grace that crosses generations. You are joining the same river of intercession that has flowed from saints, mystics, and ordinary hearts who believed in mercy's reach beyond the visible. In heaven, nothing prayed in faith is lost. Every act of trust is preserved. Every whispered chaplet becomes an eternal note in the song of salvation. This is why Jesus asked for it to be prayed constantly, for it to fill the hours of the world. Because mercy is not bound by clocks or calendars, it bends time to meet every soul that needs it most. So when you sit in silence, beads in hand, and feel as if your words vanish into the air, remember, they are not fading. They are flying. They move through time, through distance, through hearts you will never meet. You are not only praying for the living, you are helping the dying, consoling the forgotten, and calling grace upon the world itself. The chaplet unites you with heaven's eternal heartbeat, where past, present, and future are gathered into one continuous cry for mercy. And in that mystery, you realize something extraordinary. The mercy that bends time has already touched you. Every prayer you thought went unanswered was simply waiting in eternity to return as grace. Because in God's mercy, nothing is ever too late. The mirror of a trusting heart. Trust is not built in comfort. It is born in surrender. The heart that truly says, "Jesus, I trust in you," does more than speak. It reflects heaven itself. When a soul reaches that point of trust, when it stops demanding proof and begins to rest in mercy, it becomes a mirror through which God's own image shines back into the world. That is the mystery of divine reflection. The more you trust, the more you resemble the one you trust in. This kind of trust does not appear suddenly. It grows in the soil of surrender. It begins when reason ends, when control slips away, when life refuses to make sense. In that moment, you have two choices: to grasp tighter or to release everything into God's hands. And when you release, even trembling, something sacred happens. The weight lifts, the anxiety fades, and an inner stillness takes its place. That stillness is not emptiness. It is presence. It is the evidence that the soul has aligned with divine will, that heaven now sees its own reflection in your surrender. The Divine Mercy Chaplet is a school of trust. Each repetition is a lesson in letting go. With every word, you declare that you are not the master of your fate, that mercy governs your life. You learn to live not by fear, but by faith, not by control, but by confidence in God's goodness. Over time, this changes the very rhythm of your heart. What once reacted to chaos now responds with calm. What once demanded answers now finds peace in not knowing. Trust transforms your heart from a mirror of worry into a mirror of mercy. When St. Faustina painted the image of Jesus with the rays of light pouring from his heart, he gave her a simple inscription: "Jesus, I trust in you." Those words were not decoration. They were the essence of the message. Trust opens the gate through which mercy flows. Without it, grace remains untouched, waiting. But when trust appears, heaven rushes to meet it. Every time you pray those words, you are not just professing belief. You are unlocking grace that cannot enter through fear. The trusting heart becomes a reflection of divine confidence. It no longer asks if God will act. It rests knowing that He already has. It no longer measures faith by feelings, but by fidelity. Such a heart brings peace to others, because people can sense mercy reflected in it. The one who trusts deeply becomes a vessel, calm in storms, radiant in trials, unshaken by uncertainty. Through that person, others catch a glimpse of heaven's assurance, and hope begins to spread. To trust in God is to allow Him to see Himself in you. It is to stand before His mercy, unmasked, vulnerable, yet unafraid. That trust is not naive. It is defiant faith. It stares into the unknown and says, "Even here, I will believe." And heaven answers that kind of courage with favor beyond measure. So when you hold your chaplet and whisper those words, know what they mean. You are not only expressing faith, you are reflecting the face of the one who never fails. The trusting heart mirrors His love so perfectly that, for a moment, heaven sees its own light shining from within you. And that is the miracle. Not that you trust God, but that God chooses to reveal Himself through your trust. The fire that does not consume. There is a fire that destroys, and there is a fire that purifies. The first burns everything in its path, leaving ashes and emptiness behind. The second burns differently. It refines. It clarifies. It strips away everything that does not belong until only what is eternal remains. The Divine Mercy Chaplet brings the soul into that second kind of fire. It is the fire of mercy, the flame of divine love that purifies the believer without consuming him. When you pray it with sincerity, you are not asking God to take away the fire. You are asking Him to stand within it, with you. Every soul that truly desires holiness must pass through this fire. It is the testing ground where false beliefs, illusions, and attachments are burned away. At first, it feels painful, the loss of control, the stripping of pride, the letting go of what once seemed necessary. But beneath that discomfort is transformation. The same heat that melts away fear forges strength. The same flame that exposes your wounds also cauterizes them. Mercy's fire does not come to punish. It comes to prepare. It is the sacred energy that refines your trust until it shines brighter than your suffering. This is what happens when grace meets surrender. The fire enters, and everything unworthy of love begins to fall away. You may not notice it at first, but gradually your reactions change, your prayers deepen, your heart softens. The things that once terrified you lose their hold. You stop resisting God's will because you begin to see it not as a threat, but as freedom. The fire that once frightened you now warms you. It becomes the proof that His presence is not distant, but alive within you. Even the saints trembled before this fire. Saint Faustina herself described moments when God's light felt so intense, it burned through her soul, showing her every imperfection. Yet she called it mercy, because she knew that divine fire reveals not to humiliate, but to heal. When you let the flames of mercy purify you, you start to understand that suffering, when united with Christ, is not destruction. It is resurrection in progress. What appears as loss is simply the old self making room for the new. When you pray the chaplet in times of trial, imagine that each word is a spark of that same fire. For the sake of His sorrowful passion is not just remembrance, it is participation. You are entering the fire that Christ endured and discovering that what burned Him was not hatred but love so intense it consumed death itself. The fire of mercy does the same in you. It burns away despair, purifies intentions, and leaves behind only what is real, eternal, and indestructible. And when the process feels too hard, remember this truth. Mercy's fire never destroys what belongs to God. It consumes only what keeps you from Him. If you stay within that flame, your faith will not be lost, it will be reborn. Because divine fire does not end in ashes, it ends in light. The soul that survives it does not merely believe in God, it becomes radiant with Him. The dawn after the last tear. There comes a moment when the soul reaches the end of its strength. The prayers have been said, the tears have fallen, and nothing more can be offered. It is the point where surrender becomes the only act left. That is where the dawn begins. Because in the silence that follows the final tear, something sacred stirs. Not outside, but within. It is not the end of faith. It is its rebirth. The Divine Mercy Chaplet leads the soul to that very threshold, where human exhaustion meets divine renewal, where all that is broken is gathered into the hands of the One who makes all things new. When you have cried until no tears remain, heaven does not see weakness. It sees purity. Every tear shed in trust becomes a drop of light before the throne of God. Every whispered, "Jesus, I trust in you," is a spark that rises from the ashes of defeat. The dawn after the last tear is not just the return of light to the world. It is the moment when light begins to dwell inside you. The pain that once felt endless becomes the very soil where mercy blooms. God does not erase the memory of the night. He transforms it into testimony. The soul that has walked through darkness becomes the lamp by which others find their way home. At this point, prayer changes. It is no longer a request for rescue, but an act of communion. You begin to see that God was present in every moment you thought He was silent. He was not absent. He was shaping your heart for this new dawn. The wounds that once made you question His love now reflect it. The waiting that once seemed unbearable now reveals purpose. Every delay was an act of mercy, preparing you to receive what you could not yet carry. The light that rises after the storm is not borrowed from the sun. It comes from within. It is Christ Himself, alive in the soul, that chose to trust even when it hurt. This is the mystery that the chaplet carries into every heart that prays it. It is not only a path through suffering, it is the transformation of suffering into glory. It teaches you that every ending in God's hands becomes a beginning. The dawn does not erase the night, it fulfills it. And when that light finally breaks, you realize something profound. Your tears were never wasted. Each one was counted, each one heard, each one turned into mercy that will now flow through you to others who are still in the dark. So as the night of doubt fades, as the last echo of pain softens, stand in the new light and breathe. You are not the same. You are stronger, softer, and freer. You have not simply survived. You have been remade. This is the dawn after the last tear, the moment when the heart no longer asks why, but simply says, "Thank you." The faith that was once fragile is now unbreakable. The prayer that once begged for help has become a song of trust. And the soul that once wept in shadows now shines with the mercy that conquered the night.